Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the Honorable Congressman Scott Peters.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be back with you. I've been here before. You always make me smell the food and don't feed me. That was a joke. Now there's some mother out there who's going to rush to get me food, but I'm okay. So. I thought maybe just a little bit of an introduction to me and then how I approach Congress, tiny bit about what we're talking about this year, a little bit about Iran, but I mostly want to leave time to have a conversation with you. We have a short amount of time. But this is my sixth term in Congress. It's an honor to represent San Diego. I'm very proud of what happens here. We have four economies that drive San Diego. They are the military, which is about 20% of our jobs. We're proud partners in the national defense with the Marines, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. But it's also a very important part of our economy. A lot of investments happen here, including a new training facility for the Navy SEALs, which we did when I was on the Armed Services Committee. Big improvements to the Miramar Air Station, more ships, more docks for ships at Naval Base San Diego. And all very important to the country and to our economy. Also, as a result of that, we have, I think, one of the largest populations of veterans, about 230,000 in the county. I pay a lot of attention to make sure that they have opportunities, that they have health care, and that those who fall on hard times and homelessness are taken care of. Second, the border. San Diego recognizes that Mexico is a friend, that the border is an opportunity, not a threat, as do all the chambers of commerce along the Mexican border. Sure, we want order at the border. I think that's legitimate, but let's not demonize our friends across the border who count in terms of trade with us, but billions of dollars of economic activity, tens of thousands of jobs. One of the main things we did since I've been in Congress is finish the port of entry at San Ysidro, which is, I think, an investment that taxpayers can be proud of. It both facilitates commerce and provides security with high technology screening of equipment so that things we don't want to come in don't come in. We've got a lot of work to do on making sure that that's fully staffed and that there's additional border crossings. But San Diego is a very pro-border trade town, and we try to make sure that the people in Washington who are far from the border understand that as well. Third is tourism. We're lucky to live in a place where people pay to visit. So not a lot of federal issues with that, sometimes visas, but we just want to make sure that the place stays nice, a nice place to live and a nice place to visit. And fourth is science and technology. So we are the center of, obviously, the headquarters for Qualcomm, so we're big in telecommunications. I was at a dinner once with Erwin Jacobs, and he was sitting at his table and his phone rang and no one told him to turn off his phone. Right? And everyone understands the role that company has played here. But the other thing I would just point out is we're the third leading biotechnology center in the country and maybe in the world after Boston and the Bay Area. We have about 70,000 people working in life sciences. We have about 1,000 companies. So certainly we're happy to have big companies like Eli Lilly and Pfizer here. But if you have 1,000 companies, that means a lot of them are small startups trying to solve hard science problems with private risk capital. And we work really hard to make sure that that ecosystem continues. A big thing that's happening now is genomics. What's happening from Illumina and other companies here, that kind of technology has opened up amazing opportunities for early interventions in healthcare, understanding what's happening with sick kids, where the specialists can't figure that out, being able to detect cancer with a blood test. Today I talked to someone who's talking about forensics and making sure that we can capture the bad guys who have not been apprehended on these cold cases, because we have this tremendous new technology. I want to support that as well. My personal interest also, as an environmental lawyer for 15 years, before I became a city council member, a city council president, is climate change, and I'm trying to make sure that we invest well the $350 or so billion we've authorized for climate. Right now I'm focused on time. We have the money, but we have to do this in time. We can't be delayed with a lot of process. And I've actually, speaking back to Democrats about some of the environmental laws in the 1970s that were designed to slow things down, stop bad things, are going to get in the way of us building good things, like more transmission lines, more offshore wind, solar power facilities, hydrogen pipelines, all that stuff needs to be built out. We have to reduce the process barriers and litigation around that as well. So this Congress started out a little rocky. If you follow it, if you watch Congress on TV, get a better cable package. Because but it was kind of wild to see Kevin McCarthy struggle to get his votes. Kevin is an acquaintance of mine. I know him pretty well. We're working together on a bill to save the sequoias. He represents 60% of the sequoias. I spent a day with him back in May, and he was very confident he was going to win a large majority. And because of some things that happened, including the abortion ruling from the Supreme Court, his margin is very narrow. So the things he aspires to do in terms of making a better Congress will be very difficult for him. It's going to be very difficult for him to pull all of his people in one direction. He's only got a 5-vote margin. And there's quite a few people, maybe 20 or so, that, I mean, I don't need to be political, don't seem to be concerned about whether it works or not. So the Republicans and Democrats will have to work together, and that's what I like to do. I like finding friends on the other side of the aisle who understand problems and we can work together, because bipartisan legislation is durable legislation. You know, when you do something with just one party, it's immediately a political target. But if you can do it together, it's got legs on both sides of the aisle. It's more likely to be durable. So, just a couple of examples. I've become really good friends with a guy named Bruce Westerman, who represents Arkansas. He was a football player at Arkansas, and you wouldn't think much of him if you met him. He's got a very thick accent. It turns out he also got a graduate degree at the Yale School of Forestry. Bruce Westerman knows more about forestry than anyone in Congress, so we're going to save the sequoias together. And we're going to work on wildfires in California, because I have that relationship with someone who happens to be a Republican but knows what he's talking about. Another good friend of mine is Jody Arrington, who represents Lubbock, Texas, maybe the fourth or fifth most conservative district in the country. He and I have been working on debt and deficit issues together. We don't agree on much else. But we're honestly trying to figure out a way to make sure that we put the country on a sustainable fiscal path over time. We're not going to balance the budget tomorrow, but we don't have to. But we have to get this thing on track. So I'm working with Jody Arrington, who was my friend, and this term became the chair of the Budget Committee. So we're in a good position to make some things happen. So I'll just tell you, I'm not just sent there to vote with the team or just not think about things. I really try to think about how to solve problems in that context. And I think having a divided government provides as much opportunity as it does challenge. The Iranian American community here is extremely important to me and has been very good to me by politically. I guess I'm not, can I say that here? We're not on government property. You've been extremely helpful to me. My close friends, you know, Ali and Haida Mojdehi, perhaps. Ali was kind of my boss. He was a couple years senior to me at the law firm I first started at. They introduced me to Nowruz, which happened to be the first Nowruz I went to was March. I already checked my calendar. I can't go this year. I'm in DC. But the first Nowruz I went to was on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I said, this is the most unusual St. Patrick's Day party I've ever been to. But it was great. I mean, the community is very well educated, contributes in science and engineering, and city workers. We just spent summer. Shahryar Afshar was my buddy, got me involved in this group the first time. And throughout the community, and also the food is very good. I must compliment you on that as well. And I know also that that you are paying close attention to what's happening in the country of Iran. That often that the government of Iran has frustrated you, and I think, boy, just in the past few months, what we've seen is particularly shocking. That there are these killings of people, young people who are looking at the opportunity of freedom. The bill I just signed up on today was the Masa Act. Masa Act, is that what it is called?
Yes.
Named after the woman who was killed for wearing her headgear incorrectly, walking with her parents. This is the kind of tyranny that I think we have to speak up against. I've spoken to a lot of Iranian American groups who've said, just speak up. That's the most we can do, and I think we will do that. And I'll try to do that as well. You know, Iran, it's such a tragedy, a country of such great history, of such great culture and education, to be in the position it is now politically, I think is, it's a tragedy for the country of Iran, for your people. It's also a risk for the world. And you know, when you get these people who are backed into a corner, who are desperate for power, whether it's the leaders in Iran, the regime, or Putin, I mean, they present dangers, and so I think we have to be cognizant of that, and I hope that the foreign policy of the United States is responsive in the correct way. I would be interested in hearing sort of about what you think I should be doing, what questions you have for me about anything from, I used to say policy to Pelosi, but she's retired from leadership. But anyway, let me have a chat, sir. There's someone.
Thank you so much,
Congressman.
Congressman. Yes, I would like to ask you to raise your hand, and I'm going to pass the mic around. And I also would like to ask you to please refrain from making comments or opinions, so this way we could get more questions answered. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. We have a really good relationship with Scott for many years.
Yes, nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too.
Where do I know you from, though?
Iranian American Democrats.
Okay, right, okay.
And you've been in our house a couple of times as
Right,
well, so
yes.
maybe that helped.
I know the face, sometimes I just don't know where I know it.
I haven't changed much, so my mustaches are still the same. So thank you so much for your service and helping the community and all the achievements that you guys made. The city of San Diego has changed from mostly red to blue, and almost blue. There are always the exception, but and you guys have been doing great, and the community has been supporting you, and expect you to be responsive about what's going on in the community as well. So with the relationship we have with the Iranian American Democrats, I was totally shocked after I saw that you signed that HR 100, which was signed a few days ago, and I saw your signature among 190 people that supported the Mujahideen and Maryam Rajavi, which, if Iranian Americans are in one thing united, is the hatred toward this good organization. So regardless of in Iran or outside of Iran, this organization is most hated organization that you can find. So with all the records that they have, there's a cult, there are a cult, or there are a lot of stuff that you can easily check on Google and just check it out. And with all the history that they have, they killed, they're a terrorist organization, they killed Americans and all those things. So now they're, for some reason, which I know what reason, they paid a lot of Congress people to get them out of the terrorist list. So when I saw your name, I was totally shocked.
Okay.
That it was 3 people from San Diego that signed that petition, or HR 100. Juan Vargas and Daryl Isaiah. So I was surprised, and I really like to see your side of the story. That you know us, you know the Iranian American Democrats. In this situation, I could probably give it a benefit of the doubt that you probably didn't know this organization, and some people asked you to sign it or whatever. But we are here. We are here. This is a two-way, relationship.
Okay.
So if there is anything they can ask us, we can probably have better information for you to make a better decision.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that offer, and I'm probably not as familiar with the organization, but looked at the words of the resolution more, and I know there was some debate about that, but I appreciate your comment, and we'll take a look at it.
Hello and welcome, Congressman. It's nice to have you. Thank you for being here.
Speak up.
Can we hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome and thank you for being here. I'm a U.S. citizen, and last March I applied for my wife, who is an Iranian citizen living in Canada on work visa, to join me here in the US as my spouse. After 11 months, I have not heard back from the USCIS. Do you think that's a reasonable amount of time for a US citizen to be waiting to hear back on such a case? And if not, what specific actions do you think you can take, or are you going to take to make an improvement? On a second note, we received a nice pamphlet from you, my family did, suggesting that you could assist with visa processing and immigration cases to expedite it. I was wondering if you could do that for me and my wife.
Yes.
My wife is an Iranian woman who could have been Mahsa Amini. She left Iran because of the tyranny that goes on with women, and I would really like her to join me here sooner than later. I don't want to lose any time with her. So anything that you could do would be very helpful.
Thank you for the question. I would, first of all, I would ask you first if you lived in my district, but if you got that piece of mail, you do. What part of town do you live in?
Rancho Bernardo.
Rancho Bernardo. Okay, so we can help you. And the person actually who happens to run the thing is Jason. So after this meeting, give Jason your information. This is a common question. It's not uncommon to hear of long delays for people waiting, but one thing Jason can do is help you find out the status, if there's anything we can do, and if there's any reason we can provide some extra incentive to move it along. I'm sorry you've had to wait so long. Okay.
Well, Congressman, thank you for coming here. Comparing to most of the other congressmen and senators, you know more about the Iranian American community. So my first request is please educate some of the others over there. And we are here, as Mr. Saad said, if there is any question, we can provide non-partisan opinion and data, facts only, not opinion. That way, I'm hoping that the rest of the people in Congress and Senate will get educated. That's number one. And number two, regarding all of these demonstrations and motion that we had in Iran, and the people here especially are trying hard to keep the momentum going. Unfortunately, we know that it will pass and nothing will happen. I am asking why we cannot make more decisive action in Congress or Senate on these things. You know, everything is very much politically trying to be double-sided, careful, and all of those things. The more decisive action will be good for everybody. Thank you.
So, two thoughts. One is, on foreign policy, the expectation is that the president will provide the leadership and that Congress can speak up, but we're not able to execute. The State Department and the Department of Defense don't work for us. Congress itself is set up to move slowly. You need a lot of consensus, 60 votes in the Senate. You need the president to sign. So the wheels of Congress are intentionally made to turn slowly, but the president needs to provide the foreign policy leadership for the United States. I'm sort of curious though, because what I've heard too is that from a lot of Iranian Americans is that they say this has to be decided in Iran, and that the thing you need to do, the most important thing for Congress members, is to speak up against this tyranny, but that the people who will carry the day are the revolutionaries in Iran. So if there's something that you think I should be doing, or we should be doing as a nation, I mean, again, it has to run through the president and its foreign policy, but I'd love to know kind of what you think we could do beyond speaking out to support a secular democracy or government in Iran. Good.
Thank you, Congressman. I want to kind of summarize what I believe majority of people believe that the American government can do. And hopefully, I'm sure that you have heard it, but maybe we can kind of confirm it. I think majority of people here believe that what happens inside Iran and what happens to the Iranian people should be decided by Iranian people, majority of them inside Iran, even though we have tried our best to help them and be their voice. I believe majority of Iranians do not want to decide for Iranians inside Iran, but we just want to support them. So what we want you and your colleagues to know is that we do not want a change of regime by other governments, but we do not want other governments to support this current terrorist organization that has basically taken Iranian people as hostages. And you have seen it as in 1979 when they became powerful, but you may have not heard about the hostages after that, but we Iranians have experienced it with our everyday lives. So one is that we do not want change of government by other governments, but that's what ultimately Iranians want. And we want a democratic, secular government to take power by Iranians. The other thing is that we do not want other governments to work and support the current regime inside Iran. And that's something that you guys can do and other countries can do. We want IRGC to be on the terrorist organization list. We want the officials of other of Iranian regime to be expelled or kind of like removed from international communities. And we don't want, one other thing that's very important is that I'm sure you have heard that Iranian government is currently sending out basically Iranian money to other countries and through their children, who many of them live here, are US citizens. They bring their Iranian dollars outside Iran and basically invest it in US and other countries under their own names. So this is something that they're basically stealing Iranian money, and that's something I believe that American government can do. So there are certain things that we can do to stop them from, from having access to all of this money and all of that. So there are a few things that at least I thought would probably help you.
Just, is that consistent with what you understand the sanctions are intended to do now?
Yes, but I believe that, at least based on what I've read, a lot of times there are sanctions, but they're not being executed, but they're not being enforced. Yes. So yes, okay, we hear there is this certain person is on the sanction list, but if it's not being enforced, then it's not gonna,
What I ask you is, if you hear of, first of all, I think you're right. I agree with what you said. If an outside force tries to take out the regime, it will not be legitimate. That's why it's, I think it doesn't help in the long run, right? So I agree with that. And also, I think that that the intention of sanctions is to deal with the issue that you identified. But if it's not working, you actually may have better information about that than I do. Like, you're the first people that told me about how it's hard to get through the airport. So I need to hear from you if that's the case. Call us up. If you've got an example, we can check it out. Make sure that people aren't slipping through.
I just want to clarify. I personally don't believe that it's not working.
Okay.
But I think it's one way of putting a pressure on them, and I think eventually it will work.
Okay.
But for it to work, it has to be enforced.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Thank you so
So
much.
if we're missing something, just make sure you let us know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here. I appreciate that. I want to follow up on the first question that was asked of you. And I'm going to promise it's going to be a question, not a comment. Can you walk us through your thinking process of signing that resolution? How did you come up with that decision of supporting MEK? If you could let us know. Thank you.
Jason, do you want to help me with this?
Sure. So just to clarify, House Resolution 100 is not actually a support of MEK. So what happens is, and this is where a lot of confusion comes up, the resolution itself is 20, give or take, different clauses, and what it does is it runs down factual problems with the Iranian regime. So it's a list of problems from the regime, from hostages to supporting terrorism to abusing the protesters, to Masa Amini and her death was mentioned there. So we basically list out all the problems that the regime has committed. Where the issue with MEK has come up is there's one clause in the list that talks about a meeting that they were having, and it refers to Free Iran, which we know is tied to MEK, but it talks to a meeting that they were having in Paris, and the Iranian regime attempted to bomb that meeting, and the people that were going to bomb that meeting were arrested. So that's actually the only reference, and I understand that there's some issues because it says in there, the leader of the opposition is Mariam Rajavi, I believe is her name. Yeah. So the clause itself, there has been some dispute about how it's written, but really in the context of the resolution, the reason why it comes up is we're pointing out that the Iranian regime was trying to bomb a conference of many other Iranians. That's why it's listed on there. The resolution itself is not actually taking any statement on support for the Free Iran organization or for Miriam Rajavi. It's simply pointing out that the regime's spies, you could call them, were arrested attempting to bomb this free meeting. That's the mention in the resolution.
No, it's not like that at all.
Any other questions?
I will take another look at the wording of the resolution, but typically that's, we would,
It's not like that at all.
If that's the case,
I don't have it in front of me, sir.
If that's the case, can you take your signature back?
Yes, yes.
Well, if what he said is true,
Yeah.
then that's why I wasn't objecting to it. But I can't, actually, I remember having the conversation, 2 months ago? And I'd have to look at it again. I'll take a look, I'll take a look at the thing again.
If you need any more information,
Yeah.
we'll provide.
But I take as what he said, that that's the way it was written, and it may have been interpreted a different way by somebody else, but I'll look at it again, based on your interest.
Well, hi.
And I don't have it in front of me, so I wish I'd read it before I came. I didn't know it would be an issue.
Hi, my name is Ramin Moshiri. I actually was at Ali's fundraising for the first time.
Right.
I've got your back, so I'll change the topic.
I don't have anything else to say. I'd like to answer all the questions.
So I'll change the topic. When I went to school, I came to the United States in 1977. The tuition for full-time was $500. I graduated without any student loan. My kids here, they went to Iranian school, but unfortunately the Iranian school only taught them till 4th grade class, so they're not going to survive in Iran. So my children and grandchildren belong to the United States. They are glued. So my interest, other than we are Iranian Americans, but also as an American, right now we got kids. My daughter is in the medical school. And I asked this question because you are in the budget you mentioned.
Yeah.
They graduate with $300,000, $400,000 student loan. It's like a house payment, and the houses are $1 million, $2 million, quite unaffordable. Everything we buy these days, smaller packages, higher price. Shrimp burrito instead of $9 is $18. Economy is really problematic. And of course, there's a priority in healthcare and education that we never have any penny to spend on it. So with this kind of background, that we never have any money, I was quite puzzled that you could find $113 billion. I don't know where they pulled it off. So my question from the budgeting standpoint is, the folks here are hurting. So what is the plan? Thank you.
So that's a lot of questions. And, I could start to talk about student loans or inflation.
Yes.
Or balancing the budget or tax policy. Let me just say, let's just take inflation as one. It's good news, bad news. So unemployment is extremely low right now. If you want to work, you can work. It wasn't that way always, because there's a labor shortage. Part of that, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but what that means is that there's upward pressure on prices. Some of that came about as a result of the pandemic and the switch from people buying goods to all of a sudden buying services, and there have been a lot of disruptions in a lot of supply chains, and it's caused a lot of price increases. So cars, eggs, everything else. So some of that will go away, but some of it is more longer term, and there's a couple of things you just raised. One is workforce training, and one is, one I would say is justice immigration. Just on immigration, there's a lot of talk about the border being out of control, and that's not entirely untrue. There's a lot of people coming across. It's not that they're coming across illegally, but the asylum process is really so choked up from so many people, and I think, I give the president some credit for trying to deal with it by having people apply abroad, and international law protects the right to seek asylum, but we probably could process people at the border rather than having them come in and having to extricate them. There should be some more control over it, but fundamentally the way we've always dealt with labor shortages is we've gone to immigration. And we have labor shortages throughout the economy, from farm workers, any farmer will tell you, home health care, manufacturing, and science and technology. We educate some of the smartest people in the world. Maybe your daughter would have been an Iranian citizen who got a degree here, and then we tell her, you can't stay, we're going to send you back to where you came from. Go, cure patients, or invent your thing, or start a business someplace else. That doesn't make any sense. And it's a little bit racialized, I think. It's a little bit xenophobic, but it's just not very smart. So I think one thing is I think we should rationalize immigration and allow more people to come in legally and have a process for that. That would help us with the labor shortage, and also with demographics. A budget issue too is, as our population ages, it further exacerbates the precarious problems with Medicare and Social Security funds, because we don't have young people paying in. So that's one thing. Workforce training is going to be a big issue, because as we age, we need people in all fields. You hear all these people are short. We're short on welders, we're short on truck drivers, we're short on lots of doctors and specialties. So I think that one thing we should be turning our attention to is how we make sure we're training people to do the jobs that need to happen. There's a suite of ways to do that. You could start with the high school curriculum, could have some more of these things. There should be more trade schools. Not everyone has to go to four-year college. A lot of what you can learn is a two-year degree, but then there are four-year degrees, and like your daughter, we need doctors, and they shouldn't be punished. I believe that you should have some skin in the game. I like the idea of borrowing some money. I was a student loan kid, but I remember my student loan was 2%, and I paid it off in 10 years. It was a real bill, but it wasn't a life-changing bill like it is today. So a couple things about student loans is, we should allow them to be refinanced. We should be the government should be charging what it costs us for money. We shouldn't be using students as profit centers. And they should be just chargeable in bankruptcy for people who can't pay them, which is a bizarre restriction you've imposed. And I would just say the one bill that has passed on student loans is the one that I authored with Rodney Davis, who's a Republican from Illinois, which is the Employer Assistance and Repayment Act. So now, if you go to work for a company, the company can pay up to $5,250 per year of your student loan without it being taxable to you, the student. So that's a great benefit for you, because you'll go work for that company. They'll still get the same deduction as they would for paying salary, but you don't have to pay tax on it, and that gives a little bit of relief for folks. But I think you identified a larger problem. That's your daughter as an example of that. She's going to dig out from it, but it's a deep hole. And I appreciate that, and think that workforce development across the board is something we have to pay more close attention to. If you want to know how to balance the budget, I could go on a little bit longer about that.
Anyone else?
Thank you. I would like to add to what my friend here said. We want to, we actually ask the government to stop negotiating with terrorists. And I think that's across the border, everyone wants that. Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe you're referring to the JCPOA, but that is, I think that's off the boards right now. I think also the fact that Iran is helping the other side in Ukraine. It's just, it's not a time when we can do that. So we hear you.
We have time for one more.
This is the last question. I'm so sorry.
Do you think Biden gonna get reelected?
You don't have permission to ask, but I'll answer that question in a second. Did you have a question, ma'am?
Yes. Good evening, Congressman Peters. Thank you for being here. My concern question is a combination of other people's who voiced it out, but I would also like to say it, maybe it is a repetition, and I'm going to read on from my, so to make it shorter, to take less time.
Okay.
To the high majority of Iranian oppositions, finding out the Congress bipartisan has decided and kept it as secretly as possible to hold a meeting with the leader of MEK, who also took part in U.S. Embassy hostage-taking and hated by the majority of Iranians as the replacement for the Islamic regime, and announcing to welcome their leader in Tehran next year has come extremely appalling. Iranians inside and outside Iran have suffered immensely for the past 44 years. It is not a secret that the West's concern is mainly securing their own benefit, and Iranian American community benefits from that as well. And we thank you for that. However, does it have to be done by squeezing the life out of my people out? Kindly please explain based on what election or statistics from the screams of protesters, either inside or outside of Iran, has the US Congress has taken it upon itself to enforce another dire destiny on my country and people. This feels as a betrayal of Iranians' efforts for choosing specific Congress representatives to be also their voice with their concerns. Thank you very much.
Let me just say, I'm not sure about the direct, but what I'd say this is that there's tremendous support for the Iranian people in the entire Congress. That at the very least, everyone in Congress is extremely skeptical of the Iranian government. We see it as an adversary or an enemy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So I think that whatever resolutions you may be reading, I think we may have a different interpretation of a particular resolution. I'm going to go look at that. But you have the support of me, you have the support of the United States against this terrorist regime. We consider it an enemy in terms of developing nuclear weapons, an enemy in terms of supporting terrorism, and I don't think there's any disagreement about that among anyone in the Congress. I can't think of anyone who feels the way I think you're suggesting that Congress feels about Iran. I mean, we are for the people, we are not for the government, and we're tremendously sympathetic with the people who are trying to change things there at the risk of their own lives. And I really believe you have their support, and you have my support. Your question about Biden?
Yes.
I think, well, so it's very interesting. I was a Bloomberg guy because Biden had $20 in his campaign, had never won a state in the 3 times he ran for president. Then all of a sudden he won South Carolina, and then he's a credible guy. And I thought he was the kind of person who we needed to beat Trump, someone who had seen how the government can work together. Even though Biden is certainly a progressive liberal, he knew how to work with everybody, and I think that was really important. Now he's 80, and he's the oldest president we've ever had already. And if he runs for re-election, he would be darn near 90. He'd be 90 at the end. And so, does he win? I think maybe he wins, but I think it depends on a few things. elections, we all say, like all Democrats say, we don't want him to run again, but it's always who else are you going to get. I think there's some credible Democrats who could win. We've got Governor Whitmer from Michigan. We've got some governors now who I think should show some experience. We've got Gina Raimondo is one of my favorites. She's the Secretary of Commerce. She was the governor of Rhode Island. Would be very competent. But who knows who it would shake out to be. Right now, the vice president is not popular. And I don't think she would, I think she would have a hard time winning, but the question is whether she's going to get extra scrutiny because she's running as the vice president of someone who's quite elderly and might actually become the president. So that's going to be a challenge. But it also depends on who the Republicans put up, because an election, whatever you think, is always between two people. I don't like that guy, I don't like that guy either, but I got to pick one of them. So the Republicans could, in their infinite wisdom, put up someone who's really terrible, and then Biden could win. But I think it's really a very interesting time. I'm a big fan of what he's done. I think he's earned the right to run for re-election. He's been a consequential president and a leader, and he's shown some real strength and some real craftiness. And obviously, I think it'd be easier if he were 60 than 80, but I just don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out, and I don't know. I think he's going to run, and he'll have my support if he does, but I'll be crossing my fingers and rolled up in a ball in the fetal position. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me, for the support that you've given me. I owe you an answer to the question. I will look at that again. I think Jason expressed kind of our thinking about it, but I will take another look at it again because I felt the concern, and I will certainly do that. But above that, just remember that we do so appreciate the contributions of the Iranian American community to this community. I value you very much, and certainly we are thinking of the people in Iran who are oppressed, who are looking for freedom that we take for granted, and are willing to fight and die for it. And I think I see that in Ukraine, I see that in Iran. It's the kind of thing I think we should support in a way that's most helpful to them. So not to overthrow a government, but to offer our support for folks, to let them know that we're with them, and that we hope that they are successful. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.